Well, Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Happy almost Elvis's birthday,
Oh, forgot about that one.
January 8th, the
Okay.
King.
Yeah, and a week before my birthday, a week to the
Oh, is
day.
that true?
Yeah,
God, they grow up before you know it, don't
January
they?
15th. Well, yeah. Physically, emotionally, I'm
So
not so
Martin Luther
sure.
King,
But yeah,
you and Martin Luther King.
MLK.
I believe that was also the date of the very first Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. I was 3, so I don't remember. The details are fuzzy. But yeah. Um, well,
Anyhow, it's been a little while since we've had contact with you all and we've made a video, but we're happy to be able to do it today. 2019, brand new year, so brand new video for a brand new year.
yeah.
And so, given the temporal context, we thought we might talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions and resolutions in general, and the ideas we have to sort of make ourselves better. And I guess this topic is particularly apropos, given the fact that we've changed a little bit since you last saw us. First of all, I have a beard. Not sure if that looks good or not.
I think you look quite dapper.
Dapper.
Yeah.
Dapper Eric.
It's kind of a lumberjack kind of look going on
Well,
there.
the dapperness is difficult given the fact that over the holidays I put on some weight.
Me too.
So
Oh
we
yeah,
both put on some weight. So if we look a little bit wider than you're used to,
yeah.
uh,
We don't have the panoramic view on the cameras. It's just our increased appetite during the holidays.
that's right, and girth.
Or girthness.
Yeah.
So, hence our topic
Yes,
for
yes.
today.
Resolutions and like the extent to which we're able to follow through with them and struggles in keeping them and wishful thinking as wishful thinking enters into our desires and our so-called commitments. We could get into the nature of commitment,
Yeah.
and what is a real commitment, and maybe one initial point of contact might be with something that I've noticed through the years of working out, and which is that around New Year's, if you go to gyms or you run at the track, I ran for many years, and you'll see this every year that all of a sudden there'll be a big burst of people who come out in brand new running shoes and running gear, and there'll be a whole bunch of those people at the track, and then about 2 or 3 weeks later there'll be hardly any of them left.
Yeah. And then a few months after that, all the running shoes and the track gear is in their yard sales
Yes,
in
yeah.
the driveways.
So they disappear. So I think the reality is that, a lot of the time we have good intentions, and we even have desires to improve ourselves, but it becomes a little bit more difficult in practice. And I think, one way that I had of thinking about that phenomenon is that, people have desires, but when they come to face the reality, the sort of unforgiving reality of working out and how sort of physically challenging and difficult that is, that has a way of dissuading us.
It's well, there's a level of difficulty to it, but that's multifaceted. There's Because there's discipline involved, there's determination, there's intention, and there's also time.
Oh yeah, yeah, time.
Because the interesting thing to me is, why is it that we seem to fill our time with the more desirable things and let those things that require more determination and more intention be discarded or fall by the wayside?
Yeah. Well, determination, I think, is sort of a difficult thing. Commitment is a difficult thing. So if we have a choice between, let's say, doing a whole bunch of push-ups or watching, what did we watch last night? The Bird Box. My wife and I watched that last
I
night.
still don't know what that is, but I heard of
Yeah,
it.
it's sort of a big deal. Like most of the time, we're going to default to the easy thing.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah.
in the absence of what we might call commitment or determination, I think the default is always going to be the easier, more entertaining, more pleasurable thing. Sort of the Skinnerian motivation
Mhm.
takes over if there's nothing else standing in its way.
Conditioned behavior.
Yeah, right, yeah.
We get we're rewarded for the enjoyment of sitting on the couch and watching the TV,
Well, yeah, it's more immediately
and it's
pleasurable.
immediate gratification.
Right, yeah. So, and we live in a culture, I think, of immediate gratification, which I think it makes it very difficult for us, especially as we get older, like Mark and I are, and forgetful in our age, to stand against that, to stand against the sort of whole ethic and posture of immediate gratification and make something like a determined decision to be out on the track running around when no one else is.
Yeah.
And maybe it's raining slightly and it's 35 degrees maybe, which is cold here by Georgia standards.
And it's not only the physical challenges that we set for ourselves, because those are the most obvious things for the new year. Is my New Year's resolution is I'm going to lose 20 pounds or whatever, which is what mine is actually.
Yeah. I want to drop 7 or 8 and get back to where I was before the holidays.
But it's also it's pervasive, even and it plays itself out in our culture. I think, like just the reading of books.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody reads books
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Now, if you go in the week before Christmas into Barnes and Noble, you can hardly get in the building.
Mm-hmm.
For everybody buying everybody else a big coffee table book on something or other.
Yeah.
But as far as really having an intention, I'm just using books as an example.
Oh yeah, I
reading
get it.
as an example.
I get it. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of areas of our life that are like that. It's changing. It's morphing into ways that supposedly make life easier for us, like technology.
Mm-hmm.
But it has some dangerous side effects.
Well, I think part of what's going on, as you talk about it, Mark, the seductions, I think, of our world have become even more seductive over time. That, for me, one of the great seductions is playing video games. And as video games improve and the graphics improve and the overall quality improves, it becomes a lot harder to sit down and read Moby Dick.
Yes.
When you have Red Dead Redemption 2
Yeah.
sitting there as a Christmas gift, which I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just sitting there waiting for you. I mean, who wants to plow through that 800 pages of,
Yeah.
how to render whales and all of that stuff that's in Moby Dick,
Yeah.
when you have Red Dead Redemption 2 sitting there.
Well, yeah, and so if I think, well, I'm going to take another crack at being and time,
Mm-hmm.
or there's also a new update for World of Warcraft, which my wife and I both play.
Yeah.
So I could be online playing with her, sitting next to her, like you and I are playing video games, or I could be making a determined effort to continue reading this book that I've struggled with for the last several
Yeah.
years.
And being in time, the book he's referring to is, I would say, notoriously difficult. It is not easy to read, for sure.
Which is one of the reasons I set it as a challenge for myself.
Yeah.
But it is so easy to let those things go and just take an easy. And there's nothing wrong with playing video games. I mean, there are people that make a living playing video
Oh,
games.
yeah. Yeah.
Trevor Bevins or something like that is the guy's
Yeah.
name. His online name is Ninja, and I just read an article about him a couple days ago. Plays a game called Fortnite,
Oh, yeah, that's very popular now.
and
Yeah.
he estimated that he made about $10 million last year.
Playing Fortnite.
He's a professional gamer.
Wow.
So there are always more sides to whatever the issue is, but there has to be a balance.
Mm-hmm.
He still talks about how he has to build in time for his family, married, and so forth.
Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze.
Gesundheit.
Wait, edit that out.
He talks about how he has to build in time for other things to be away.
Yeah.
But he says even when he's doing that, they're both calculating how much money they lost in the 6 hours he was offline. of not having the pay-per-view or however that works, but people paying to watch him play.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you imagine the struggles that you and I have, like let's say resisting video games. Imagine what it's like for the average 20-year-old
Yeah.
who never grew up having to read Moby Dick or, run 3 miles around the track or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
If it's seductive for us.
it can be seductive, even intoxicating,
Oh yeah.
almost like a drug.
Like a narcosis
Yeah.
kind of thing. I think it is. It does have those qualities. I think, there's a lot of literal addiction around, but I think even more than that, there's a lot of figurative addiction around. I think we live in a culture structured largely according to the dynamics of addiction and addictive dynamics. And
Oh yeah.
like celebrities, you can see this with our attitude towards celebrities. We're always looking for the next Kardashian fix, and what are they doing, and did they have a bowel movement today? And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's interesting too. That could be a whole another video. What is it about that kind of interpretation of the way we live that causes so many people to give such high regard to people like that, of their opinions, that they would know anything more about politics or world affairs or anything else than we do?
or their own souls.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
can get more personal than that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's part of what gets dissolved away. When we get so fixated on external gratification and easy gratification, is part of what we lose is the capacity to be quiet enough and still enough to come to know our own souls and our own hearts, and consequently our own lives and our own sense for the direction we
Yeah.
really want to go, such as maybe getting fit. So I think part of the struggle with getting fit and making New Year's resolutions is really that we've lost touch with our souls, with our deep inner desires.
So I think maybe a more well-rounded way to look at our topic is of seeing it as an intentional building in of reflection and mindfulness in our daily life.
Well, I think so. Probably those of you who've been watching this channel already know that I'm pretty big on meditation. And what meditation is about is exactly finding or making space for silence and stillness, so that, and the idea there is to become more mindful, not merely in the act of meditating, but hopefully within the larger run of life too, so that we're maybe a little more immune from being so easily deflected. Like, what is Kim Kardashian doing? I must know. I must
Yeah.
fathom the intricacies and details of her life.
So
I think I'm doing Dr. Evil slightly there.
Dr.
I must know the details.
it's Dr. Evil.
Dr. Evil. Sorry.
So it's and it sounds like a paradox, but I think that you're onto something, because I think in the building in of mindfulness into our daily life, it will help most everyone that really wants to have some kind of a resolution, a New Year's goal, a changing kind of initiative to go that way, and to have more success with it.
Well, I would agree with that, but I'm seeing a difficulty there, and the difficulty has to do with paradox. You brought up the term paradox, and I agree that there are any number of paradoxes in becoming mindful, but one of them is that you can make a New Year's resolution to become more mindful, right? So now your resolution, which would require mindfulness, is to become mindful. And so then the problem, of course, is the same one with exercise, that, well, it's so damn easy to be seduced away from the thing that would allow you not to be seduced.
Yeah. So that's tough, and that's where the idea of intention comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Of I call it gaining perspective. If I can step back from myself and look with perspective at my intentions and my desires of my daily life, it helps me to go forward with whatever it is that I have planned for myself.
Yeah, perspective, that's not a bad term. I sort of prefer the mindfulness type language, partly because, I'm so steeped in Buddhist thought, but partly because perspective can seem like a very distant thing. In other words, you can have perspective on something in your life and still not have the constellation of desire and attitude to engage it. Right? You can have perspective on your weight, for instance. You can say, look at your body and say, I could stand to lose 8 pounds, or 20 pounds. And you can have that perspective and yet still not have the desire to actually get out on the track when you don't want to.
But, but it has the effect for me of motivating me to do that thing.
Well, that's great. That's wonderful.
It's almost like a self-talk.
Yeah.
And so I guess the bottom line here for this, for our purposes, is to challenge ourselves to be more mindful.
Yeah. There again, that's a paradoxical thing. Like, how do you challenge yourself to be? See, a lot of these paradoxes come up in meditation. Like, when you're trying to be still.
Right.
Oh, I'm trying to be really still. The very act of trying already means you're not actually being still.
So stop trying.
Yeah, in a way. Like, that's one of the paradoxes of it, is to become mindful. You almost have to give up the project of becoming mindful. Because as long as you're trying to be mindful, you're already deflected from actually being mindful. So it's almost like, I think that oftentimes the way in which our lives are deepened, because really when we're talking about being mindful, we're talking about sort of deepening our lives, deepening our perceptual fields, gaining perspective, and so on, is that we need to almost accomplish a kind of quantum leap beyond our whole way of framing our lives in terms of what it is we think we want and what we have to do to attain it.
Right.
Like, we almost need to be sort of jolted loose from that whole framework in order to be truly still, to give up the trying.
Well, it has to be a different paradigm.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about, like a paradigm shift or a sort of a quantum leap. Or I sometimes like to think of it in terms of the metaphor of stumbling, which I think is more sort of immediately bodily. Like you're walking along, you think you know what you're doing, and sometimes you stumble, like let's say on the curb or something like that. Like the experience of stumbling into mindfulness perhaps would be a better paradigm for how it actually happens than trying to be mindful and sort of mapping out a regimen where, damn it, I'm going to be mindful, I'm going to be so damn mindful today. You're not being mindful in that desire. You're mindful of your desire, but you're not sort of mindful of reality.
So it's a different way of taking up life.
Yeah, a different way of taking up life. So maybe the question is, how can we ready ourselves for a disorienting lapse of the normal sense of continuity that we have with respect to our willful attempts to get what we want out of life with our resolutions?
Jolted into change.
Yeah. It's, like almost sort of, I remember in one of Castaneda's books, Carlos Castaneda, I can't remember which book it is, there's like 10 of them, the shaman character, Don Juan, sort of at one point sort of grabs Castaneda's head and sort of physically sort of turns it a little bit. And sort of the idea there was that what he was actually doing was shifting his whole perceptual field, like precipitating a moment of discontinuity in the habitual way that he would sort of construe his experience and think of what his life's about and so on and so forth.
So let's finish this up by telling ourselves that we have permission to do that.
Yeah.
I think giving ourselves permission.
Okay. Yeah. Like you're allowed to be deep. You're allowed to be disoriented. You're allowed to be mindful. You're allowed to fathom and swim in the deeper currents of what you are as a being.
Because it's not just about working out or just reading a book. We're
Yeah.
just playing a game.
Right, because you're living your life
Yeah.
in the process. Really, what it's about is you're living your life.
So we hereby give all of you
And
ourselves
ourselves.
permission
Yes.
to live our life.
Yeah, and lose a few pounds
And
along the
lose-
way.
lose some pounds in the process.
Thanks
Happy
for
New
joining
Year.
with us. Yes, Happy New Year. Happy almost Elvis birthday. Happy almost Mark birthday. Happy almost Martin Luther King birthday.
See you next time.
Take care now.